The truck sat halfway up a narrow mountain road in Latimer County, Oklahoma, doors locked, windows rolled up, and nothing but wind and pine needles moving around it. Inside were 3 cell phones, a GPS unit, a bank bag with $32,000 in cash, and the family's small dog, alive but starving. The keys were in the ignition. The Jamison family, Bobby, his wife Sherilynn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madyson, were gone. The road climbed through the Sandboys Mountains, a quiet stretch of the Ouachita Range near the town of Red Oak. Hunters found the truck on October 17, 2009, but no one could say exactly how long it had been there. It looked like someone had stepped out for a walk and never come back. Police traced the vehicle to the Jamisons' home in Eufaula, about 30 miles away. Neighbors said the family had been packing to move, maybe to buy land in those hills. They'd talked about living off-grid, away from people. When deputies searched the truck, the cash in the bank bag caught immediate attention. The bills were clean, banded, untouched. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no blood. But the belongings, wallets, IDs, phones, a GPS, told investigators that the family hadn't intended to leave for long. At their home, things looked almost as strange. Security camera footage from the driveway showed Bobby and Sherilynn walking back and forth between the house and the truck over and over, packing items in a kind of trance. They never spoke. At times, they simply stopped and stared into space before moving again. It went on for nearly 20 minutes. To detectives watching later, it looked almost rehearsed. 2 people performing the motions of moving without urgency, emotion, or reason. Friends told investigators that Bobby and Sherilynn had been acting strangely for months. Both were struggling with depression, and Bobby's back injury had left him dependent on pain medication and frustrated with life. They believed their house was haunted. Sherilynn had told one friend she'd seen spirits in the yard, dark figures moving at night. She claimed to have found a witch's Bible and said she'd used it to try to remove the spirits. Bobby had gone so far as to ask his pastor whether spirits could possess a person. In the days before they vanished, Sherilynn painted odd messages on the walls of the storage container on their property, phrases about death, demons, and hatred. Investigators later found an 11-page letter she'd written to her husband filled with accusations and anger, part love note and part farewell. But there were no signs of violence in the house. The only living witness was Madyson's dog, Maisie, who had traveled with them. Cell tower records showed the family's phones had stopped transmitting near where the truck was found. The trail up the hill was rough, full of switchbacks and overgrowth, leading deeper into the forest. Search teams fanned out for miles, hundreds of volunteers, cadaver dogs, ATVs, and helicopters, but the woods swallowed them. The only trace found in those first searches was a footprint that could have belonged to a child. The money in the truck led to wild speculation. Some thought they had gone to the mountains to meet someone for a drug deal. Others said they were running from someone, perhaps even in witness protection. But there were no known threats, no large debts, and no reason to carry so much cash if they were just scouting land. The more investigators looked, the stranger the story became. A local pastor said Bobby had recently told him about seeing 2 spirits in their house, one male, one female, and that the family had begun consulting a spiritual warfare book. Sherilynn's mother added that her daughter had once believed the house was cursed. In online forums, the story took on a life of its own. Theories of witchcraft, cults, even alien abduction. By winter, the trail was cold. The mountains are merciless once the weather turns, and heavy rain washed away whatever clues the fall had left. Deputies checked hospitals, border crossings, and credit card activity. Nothing. The Jamisons had simply vanished. For nearly 4 years, the case remained open, but frozen in mystery. Then, in November 2013, hunters stumbled upon skeletal remains scattered across rugged ground less than 3 miles from where the truck had been found. The bones belonged to 2 adults and 1 child. The layout of the remains suggested they had died together, lying close enough to one another that time and weather had separated them. Forensic testing confirmed it was Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson. But any relief at finding them vanished when the coroner announced the cause of death was undetermined. There were no gunshot wounds, no blunt force trauma, no knife marks, nothing conclusive, just bones, clothes, and time. At the scene, investigators found bits of their clothing, shoes, and a small adult skull resting near the child's remains. Some believed it pointed to exposure, perhaps getting lost and dying from the elements. But the distance from the truck didn't fit that theory. The terrain was steep, but not impassable, and the family had hiked before. Why leave the vehicle with food, water, phones, and money inside? And why lock the doors? One theory suggested they had been murdered, their bodies left to decompose. But there were no shell casings, no weapons, no footprints beyond the ones made by search teams years before. Others leaned toward a tragic accident, that they'd wandered off to look at land and become lost in sudden weather. Still, the behavior caught on the home's security camera never stopped haunting the investigation. It showed something more than confusion, something closer to fear. Sherilynn's friend Nikki said she had once claimed that a family member who practiced witchcraft had cursed them. Another friend recalled Sherilynn saying she believed they were being followed by spirits, and that Madyson had begun talking to an imaginary friend, named Emily, who lived inside their house. In a late interview, Sheriff Israel Beauchamp admitted the case left him uneasy. He'd worked homicides, but this one had no logic. Nothing about this family made sense in the end, he said. Not the money, not the footage, not where they were found. Some locals suggested they might have intended a joint suicide, worn down by depression and paranoia, but the survival items in the truck, food, GPS, and a mountain map, didn't support that. If anything, it looked like they were planning to come back. Others believed they'd been lured into the woods by someone they trusted. There were rumors of white supremacist groups in the area, but no direct link. When forensic anthropologists re-examined the bones in 2015, they found no evidence of trauma. Toxicology was impossible. Animals had scattered the remains too widely for complete reconstruction. The final report read like a surrender. Cause and manner of death, undetermined. Today, the case remains open in name only. The stretch of road where the truck was found has become a kind of ghost landmark, a place where hikers slow down and remember the story of a family that vanished almost within sight of safety. The forest has reclaimed the trail, covering the old search grid with moss and pine needles. The Jamisons' relatives placed small crosses near where the bones were found, but even those fade with each season. What remains is the silence that never quite lifts. A family drives into the mountains. A storm brews. A truck waits with the engine off, a dog crying inside. The rain washes the tracks away, and time buries the rest. No one knows what happened in those woods, only that whatever it was, it left no witnesses, no explanation, and no mercy. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.